Welcome to the final destination in this video. This is the village of Borgthal. I'm potentially saying that wrong. It's quite a complicated French word for an English speaker such as myself. But this is a great spot because there were a number of images taken here of the retreating German forces just prior to them reaching the crossing points at the River Seine. And there are some wonderful photos of Jagdpanthers, tigers, and Fallschirmjäger here in the village. So we will go and find those and see if we can line up the wartime photos with the town as it stands today. So the first image I want to look at here in the town is one of two Jagdpanthers that are heading east. And we've got to remember, when it comes to the Battle of Normandy, Jagdpanthers are extremely rare. There was only 12 of them that fought in Normandy, and to see them photographed, as we've seen with the other images, is exceptionally rare. So it's a real privilege to be able to stand at this spot. Now, the buildings behind me have undergone some significant redevelopment, but there is one in the photo that we can still see from the angle that the photographer was stood that remains there today. And here's the image in question. So they're from the 2nd Company of Schwere Panzerjäger Abteilung 654, so Heavy Tank Hunter Battalion 654. And it was taken right here. Now clearly we can see that those buildings have undergone a lot of redevelopment work in the intervening years. It's no longer a hotel, they're now public homes and a shop. But in the image off to the right hand side, there is a building with a very distinct roof, and we'll just go and take a quick look at that just to match this photo up. And this is the building in question. It's now a post office, but we can clearly see there are some distinctive architectural features there, such as the roof. And if we look to the lower floor, the ground floor, and the center of the building, there's an archway, and we can see that archway remains there with the La Poste sign just above it. So the next set of images here in the town were taken just a little bit further down. Some really interesting ones of a Tiger I and its crew from Schwere Panzerabteilung 503, and some other vehicles, and we can match those up. So we'll head just a little bit further back toward the main square and try and locate those spots where those images were taken 80 years ago.
Haben Panzer und Grenadiere einen Gegenstoß durchgeführt. Feuerberührung mit der Feindspitze.
I've moved further to the main square of the town now, and behind me is the church that still actually bears some of the battle scars from when the village was liberated by the Canadians here in August 1944. But the image that I want to look at is a really great portrait of a Tiger I from 2nd Company of Schwere Panzerabteilung 503. And this was one of the here units that operated the Tiger I. Not all of them in Normandy were SS tank units. There was an allocation to the Heer as well, to the German army. And this is of Tiger 213 rolling down this road toward the crossing points at the Seine. However, sadly, it would never be able to actually cross the Seine River, as the German army just didn't have the capability to put in bridges and get vehicles such as the Tiger I across. They were just too heavy. And this is it. This is the spot roughly 80 years ago where the German combat cameraman was stood when he snapped this picture of Tiger 213 as it was heading east toward the Seine River. So just stepping the other side of the church, just a little bit further down the street toward the main square, we've got a great image now of an SD KFZ-7, a 8-ton medium prime mover, and it's loaded with German troops. It looks like it's towing perhaps a 20mm flat gun, and then there's a Schwimmwagen behind it. So not the ordinary Kugelwagen, but the Schwimmwagen, that was the one that was designed to cross rivers and basically traverse waterways with ease. And as far as small German vehicles go in World War II, it is one of my favourites because I just think the design is so unique, especially with a folding propeller on the back of it. It just is a fantastic piece of equipment. Now, the image that we're going to look at was taken roughly on this spot, just a little bit further down, all by the same combat cameraman from the German forces. And there's the image. As we can see, we've got the soldiers literally all over it. They appear to be men from one of the Fallschirmjäger divisions that was retreating east. And we can see there the Schwimmwagen behind it. And if you look closely, it's a little bit hard to see, but highly camouflaged. It could be an AT gun or a flat gun, possibly with the Fallschirmjäger, maybe more likely to be a flat gun, but it's hard to say from this particular angle. Now, to make the comparison shot between August 1944 and May 2024, almost 80 years on, that's the comparison today. Now, as we can see, there's some modern fascias been done to the, some modern work been done to the buildings here. They've been altered slightly in their outward appearance, but the shape and profile of the high street here still remains the same 80 years on. Now, for the next two images before we head to the main square, I'm stood in roughly the same spot as I was for the SD KFZ-7, the prime mover that was rolling past with the towed artillery or flat gun behind it. But we're returning back now to two images of Tiger 213 from the second company of Schwere Panzer Abteilung 503. And they were taken roughly in the same spot as that SD KFZ-7. And there's some really good images here, one of which is a close-up of the Tiger with all of the additional crewmen, probably from other elements of second company whose Tigers broke down or they had to abandon them for whatever reason, are on 213. And that's the image in question there. We can see what looks like there's some sort of growth coming out the end of the barrel, whether it was remnants of old camouflage in there, or you can just see there's an additional 4 or 5 personnel on the tank, as well as you can see the co-driver, the driver, and what appears to be the commander in the back of the shot, but he is hidden by the guy who's got his back to us with his arm over the main barrel. But it's a fantastic photo. You can see they're all army personnel, and that image was taken in this spot here. And today we can still see that the frames around the windows, those ornate metalwork frames, are still present today as they were 80 years ago when this image was taken. So I've just moved around 50 meters away from the church, just to the square now, the main town square here. And this is the last image of shots that were taken of tanks and armored vehicles and tracked vehicles moving down the main road here. And it's another one of Tiger 213 and an Opel Blitz truck, which just gives you an idea of the scale of the Tiger I, which I think is fantastic. So we'll look at that image now. And there's the image in question. You can see just how much camouflage is over that Opel Blitz truck. Again, all of the German crew and the additional crewmen that are over the Tiger I there. And that image was taken roughly from this spot here. Now, it's a little hard to get an exact comparison, as this town, despite it being 7:40 on a Sunday morning when I'm filming this, is incredibly busy. And there's been a lot of traffic going past, and I've tried to keep most of it out of shot, but standing in the middle of the road here would not be particularly good for my health. So that's why the comparison isn't an exact match, but it's just because the amount of traffic that's going through this very busy crossroads. Ironically, a lot like it was in late August 1944 when the German army were retreating through here. So for the next set of images then, they were all taken in the area behind me, and there are some fantastic ones of Fallschirmjäger troops trying to get over the Seine River and head east. The next image that I want to look at was taken just behind me, just on the western side of the church, and behind me is now a small community car park for the local shops around here. But the wartime image is that of a German soldier on a motorbike and sidecar trying to kickstart it, and there's some troops behind him in the background. And I'm stood now roughly in the spot where that image was taken, so we'll have a look at that and we'll try and make the comparison to today. And here's the image. The motorbike is a Zundap KS 750. And you can see there, he looks like he's trying to kickstart it, or he already has, and he's just going to ride it out of the way. Now, the view today has changed considerably, but that's roughly the photo lined up. And you can see there's been a lot of modern redevelopment. But if we look at the wartime image, we can see the house with the two windows very close to it in the background of the image. And we'll just go and take a look at that now. So walking along the side of this church, it did take me a little while to find this image because I thought it was taken in a slightly different part of town, or on a different side of the church, sorry. So when I found it, I was really quite pleased. Now, if I just move around, you can see that tree there, that tree was blocking the view from the wartime image to today, so it does make it a little bit tricky. That's why I wanted to show you the building in the background of the wartime image, so that you know that that was the correct spot. And there it is with that white van parked in front of it. Two windows very close together. It's been remodeled a little bit, but that is the building that we could see in that wartime photo. The next image is again of Tiger 213, and it's the final image of this particular tank. And what's really great about this image is we can see more of the details on it. We can see a jerry can on the back and more of the crew, but the building behind me is clearly in the shot, and not a lot has changed in the intervening 80 years. And there it is. There's Tiger 213 parked up, and that building there still remains exactly the same as it did in August 1944. So the final image that I want to look at here in Borgthal and for this episode is a great one of some Fallschirmjäger sat on board a BMW R75 motorbike and sidecar, and the look in their faces tells you all you need to know about how the German army and the German forces in Normandy were just hammered by the Allies from the air, from artillery, and from the relentless fighting from the 6th of June all the way through that 77-day campaign for the Battle of Normandy. And I think it's a great image. Now, it has been colorized. I couldn't find the original black and white image, but I actually think for once, as a colorized image, it's pretty decent. I'm not normally a fan, but it is quite good. Now, ironically for France, in the image you can see a World War I memorial, but it's no longer here in the village. And I think it's been moved, or it was taken down, probably because of the modernisation of where I'm stood to build in this car park. which is a shame, but there is a building and some fence posts that we can see in the image that help us identify the approximate spot that it was taken. And here's the image in question. We can see there's 2 Fallschirmjäger on board, possibly the other 2 guys are from the Luftwaffe as well. The helmets and the shape of them didn't really denote anything by this stage in the war. Those who had Fallschirmjäger helmets had them. The rest were issued M42 style helms, the M42 steel helmets. But we can see just how heavily laden that R75 is, and all of the spare tyres and spare wheels on the rear of the vehicle. Now, if we look to the right-hand side of the image, we can see a building, and then to the sort of upper left, we can see there's another big building, and there's some gate posts just behind the motorbike rider's turned head. We can see that fence post there, and we'll look at those in a second. But it's safe to say the image was taken roughly in or around this spot here. So just so you can see that my sort of analysis of that photo is correct, we'll go just a little bit further down the street just to take a look at a couple of the other details that we can see. So the building that is partly visible in the image is that one behind me there. And then as we continue to move on down this way toward the east, toward the Seine and the direction that the Germans were going, we can see the building becomes a little bit clearer now that now we're past the trees that was in that wartime image. And there it is, far more visible in the wartime image than it is today, because you can see all of the vegetation, all the tree growth that is here, which makes the village look really, really attractive. And it's an absolutely beautiful village, beautiful town, sorry, but it does make it somewhat tricky to marry up the wartime spot for this particular one. So thank you for watching this episode all about the retreat to the Seine by the German army in August 1944. I think it's personally a really interesting topic. It's one that's never covered in the Battle of Normandy. It's always looked at from the Allied point of view, but I think the retreat east that the Germans carried out is a fantastic topic to study. And I'll put some links to a couple of books that I would recommend in the description to this video. Now, if you have liked it, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It all really helps the channel to grow and for me to be able to continue to come to places like this and bring you more wartime content. Okay, I'll see you all in the next one.